Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Oliver Twist as read by Lord Naren White. On they all went, nor stopped they once to breathe until the leader, striking off into an angle of the field indicated by Oliver, began to search, narrowly, the ditch and hedge adjoining, which afforded time for the remainder of the party to come up, and for Oliver to communicate to Mr. Losberne the circumstances that had led to so vigorous a pursuit. The search was all in vain. There were not even the traces of recent footsteps to be seen. They stood now on the summit of a little hill, commanding the open fields in every direction for 3 or 4 miles. There was the village in the hollow on the left, but in order to gain that after pursuing the track that Oliver had pointed out, the men must have made a circuit of open ground, which it was impossible they could have accomplished in so short a time. A thick wood skirted the meadowland in another direction, but they could not have gained that covert for the same reason. "It must have been a dream, Oliver," said Harry Milley. "Oh, no, indeed, sir," replied Oliver, shuddering at the very collection of the old wretch's countenance. "I saw him too plainly for that. I saw them both as plainly as I see you now." "Who was the other?" inquired Harry and Mr. Losberne together. "The very same man I told you of, who came so suddenly upon me at the inn," said Oliver. "We had our eyes fixed full upon each other, and I could swear to him." "They took this way?" demanded Harry. "Are you sure?" "As I am that the men were at the window," replied Oliver, pointing down, as he spoke, to the hedge which divided the cottage garden from the meadow. "The tall man leaped over just there, and the Jew, running a few paces to the right, crept through that gap." The two gentlemen watched Oliver's earnest face as he spoke, and looking from him to each other, seemed to feel satisfied of the accuracy of what he said. Still, in no direction were there any appearances on the trampling of men in hurried flight. The grass was long, but it was trodden down nowhere save where their own feet had crushed it. The sides and brinks of the ditches were of damp clay, but in no one place could they discern the print of men's shoes, or the slightest mark which would indicate that any feet had pressed the ground for hours before. "This is strange," said Harry. "Strange?" echoed the doctor. "Blathers and Duff themselves could make nothing of it." Notwithstanding the evidently useless nature of their search, they did not desist until the coming on of one night rendered its further prosecution hopeless, and even then it gave it up with reluctance. Giles was dispatched to the different alehouses in the village, furnished with the best description Oliver could give of the appearance and dress of the strangers. Of these, the Jew was, at all events, sufficiently remarkable to be remembered, supposing he had been seen drinking, or loitering about, but Giles returned without any intelligence, calculated to dispel or lessen the mystery. On the next day, fresh search was made, and the inquiries renewed, but with no better success. On the day following, Oliver and Mr. Maylie repaired to the market town, in the hope of seeing or hearing something of the men there. But this effort was equally fruitless. After a few days, the affair began to be forgotten, as most affairs are, when wonder, having no fresh food to support it, dies away of itself. Meanwhile, Rose was rapidly recovering. She had left her room and was able to go out, and mixing once more with the family, carried joy into the hearts of all. But although this happy change had a visible effect on the little circle, and although cheerful voices and merry laughter were once more heard in the cottage, there was at times an unwonted restraint upon some there, even upon Rose herself, which Oliver could not fail to remark. Mrs. Milley and her son were often closeted together for a long time, and more than once Rose appeared with traces of tears upon her face. After Mr. Losberne had a fixed day for his departure to Chertsey, these symptoms increased, and it became evident that something was in progress which affected the peace of the young lady and of somebody else besides. At length, one morning, when Rose was alone in the breakfast parlor, Harry Milley entered, and, with some hesitation, begged permission to speak with her for a few moments. "A very few will suffice, Rose," said the young man, drawing his chair towards her. "What I shall have to say has already presented itself to your mind. The most cherished hopes of my heart are not unknown to you, though from my lips you have not heard them stated." Rose had been very pale from the moment of his entrance, but that might have been the effort of her recent illness. She merely bowed, and bending over some plants that stood near, waited in silence for him to proceed. I ought to have left here before," said Harry. "You should indeed," replied Rose. "Forgive me for saying so, but I wish you had." "I was brought here by the most dreadful and agonizing of all apprehensions," said the young man. "The fear of losing the one dear being on whom me every wish and hope are fixed. You had been dying, trembling between earth and heaven. We know that when the young, the beautiful, are good, and visited with sickness, their pure spirits insensibly turn towards their bright home of lasting rest. We know, Heaven help us, that the best and fairest of our kind too often fade in blooming." There were tears in the eyes of the gentle girl as these words were spoken, and when one fell from the flower over which she bent, and glistened brightly in its cup, making it more beautiful, it seemed as though the outpouring of her fresh young heart claimed kindred naturally with the loveliest things in nature. "A creature," continued the young man passionately, "a creature as fair and innocent of guile as one of God's own angels, fluttered between life and death. Oh, who could hope, when the distant world to which she was akin half opened to her view, that she would return to the sorrow and calamity of this? Rose, Rose, to know that you were passing away like some soft shadow, which a light from above casts upon the earth, to have no hope that you would be spared to those who linger here, hardly to know a reason why you should be, to feel that you belong to that bright sphere, whither so many of the fairest and the best have winged their early flight, and yet to pray, amid all these consolations, that you might be restored to those who loved you. These were distractions almost too great to bear. They were mine, by day and night, and with them came such a rushing torrent of fears and apprehensions and selfish regrets, lest you should die, and never know how devotedly I loved you, as almost bore down sense and reason in its course. You recovered, day by day, and almost hour by hour some drop of health came back, and mingling with the spent and feeble stream of life which circulated languidly within you, swelled it again to a high and rushing tide. I have watched you change almost from death to life, with eyes that turned blind with their eagerness and deep affection. Do not tell me that you wish I had lost this, for it has softened my heart to all mankind." "I did not mean that," said Rose, weeping. "I only wish you had left here, that you might have turned to high and noble pursuits again, to pursuits well worthy of you." "There is no pursuit more worthy of me, more worthy of the highest nature that exists, than the struggle to win such a heart as yours," said the young man, taking her hand. "Rose, my own dear Rose, for years I have loved you, hoping to win my way to fame, and then come profoundly home and tell you it had been pursued only for you to share. Thinking in my daydreams how I would remind you, and in that happy moment of the many silent tokens I have given of a boy's attachment, and claim your hand, as in redemption of some old mute contract that had been sealed between us. That time has not arrived, but here, with not fame won, and no young vision realized, I offer you the heart so long as your own, and stake my all upon the words with which you greet the offer." "Your behavior has ever been kind and noble," said Rose, mastering the emotions by which she was agitated. "As you believe that I am not insensible or ungrateful, so hear my answer. It is that I may endeavor to deserve you. It is, dear Rose?" "It is," replied Rose, "that you must endeavor to forget me, not as your old and dearly attached companion, for that would wound me deeply, but as the object of your love. Look into the world. Think how many hearts you would be proud to gain are there. Confide some other passion to me, if you will. I will be the truest, warmest, and most faithful friend you have." And we'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care and thanks again.